Start with the line that begins with the word ad. 15 lines from the top. First word of the line is ad. And we will begin with the alzeh. This is the last 3 words in the line, the alzeh. And we did this yesterday. We just back up a little bit so we can continue. Alzeh nizder seder habrachas. We said before that the davening has a certain order, certain structure. And every bracha is something which leads to the next, and the next one is a follow-up to the one preceding it. So now he goes a little bit into the order. The first thing is Acha Shalosh Rishonos. After the first 3 brachas, Shenyana Miskashrus Nafshe V'Nishmasei V'Nishmas Ha'oves HaKadoshim. Person connects his neshama to the neshama of the Oves HaKadoshim, Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, B'Sherish Nishmasei L'mayla, and he connects to the root of his neshama L'mayla. So let me just go over this a little bit. We started talking about this yesterday. Is that we all know that there are many levels of the neshama, many levels of depth, and the fact that we experience things that are not appropriate, whether it's thoughts or feelings, temptations, all this is in the more external part of the neshama. The deeper you go into the neshama, the more pure it is. In fact, in the morning, when we wake up, we start off with the bracha, Elokai neshama shenasatabi. We talk about the neshama. And we say, Hashem, the neshama that you gave me, tahirahi, she's pure. And then we say, Ata barasa, you created it. Ata yitzarta, you formed it. Ata nafachtabi, you blew it into me. So these words correspond to the descent of the neshama. That initially the neshama is in Atzilus. The source of the neshama, the origin is in the highest, purest world, which is Tahiri, it's pure. Then the neshama goes down to the next world, Ata Barasa, Bria. Then the next world, Ata Yitzarta, Yitzira. And then it comes down to this world where Hashem blew the neshama into the guf. And that's where we need protection. Ata Mishamra Bekirbi. Of course, in the higher worlds, you don't need it. So when you read this on the surface, it appears to be that once upon a time, many moons ago, my neshama was up there and it was pure, and then it came down and it changed. That's partially true. What's not true is that all those levels and layers of depth in the neshama still exist now, which means there's a part of my neshama now that's still in Atzilus. And as a part of my neshama now that's in Bria, Yetzira, and Asiya. So these are the 5 levels we always talk about. Nefesh, Ruach, Neshama, Chaya, Yechida. It means there are layers of depth in the soul. And in the deepest part of the neshama, which is the source of the neshama, that's where everything is pure and there is nothing there that's inappropriate. So when I'm going to be davening, what I want to do is draw from that deepest part of my neshama, because that's where everything is pure, and that's where everything is in order. So from there, I can draw to feel more love for Hashem, more fear of Hashem, to be more sensitive to godliness, because in that part of me, everything is pure. There is love, there is fear, there is sensitivity, but it's hidden, it's unconscious. And I want to draw it from the unconscious to the conscious. Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, we said the other day, yesterday, they're the source of all the Yidden chronologically and biologically. They were our ancestors, and all of us come from them. But spiritually, it's also the same. Their neshamas include all our neshamas. All our neshamas are neshamas that are branches and extension of their neshamas. What does that mean in different words? That their neshama is the source of our neshama. So in a sense, by connecting to them, what we're really doing is we're connecting to the deeper dimension of my own neshama. And when I do that, I'm able to draw more to my consciousness what I really feel and what I really possess deep down in my neshama. So that's why before we start Shemon Esrei, the first thing we do is say Elokei Avraham, Elokei Yitzchak, Elokei Yaakov, which means we're connecting to Hashem through the others, through Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. We're connecting to them, which is connecting to the source of my neshama. And now it'll help me in my davening that I'll be able to be more focused, tuned in, more sensitive, and feel more what I'm supposed to feel when I daven. So the first bracha is Bakashas Chaninas Hadas. The first bracha is we're asking for das, for understanding. Leida ulahakir gam is dakas hara. What are we asking for? We're asking Hashem. In a certain sense, this is the focus in Shemon Esrei. Hashem, help me recognize that subtle negativity that's in me. I should feel it in order to get rid of it. Why the asagas alakis? This comes from understanding godliness more clearly. The more you understand godliness more clearly, the more you recognize that you can be aware and sense what's in me that's not godly, even if it's something subtle and something which is more refined, but still it's not godly. I really should be able to overcome it. Like the example we gave yesterday, person learns, davens, does mitzvahs. And by the way, there are thousands of people that live that kind of life. They get up every day, they go to shul, but there's no fire, there's no enthusiasm. It's not their passion. They're very passionate about work, about growing at work, about making money, dreaming about all sorts of businesses and all sorts of things you'd like to do in order to be able to buy a new house, go on vacation. These are the thoughts that are on the mind, but they're not passionate about spiritual growth. That's not what they're thinking about. So what he said before was that even this in itself is not the worst thing, but eventually something like this is called subtle negativity. It could lead to ultimately a person, as a result of that, could lead, one thing leads to another, until eventually it could lead a person to actually violate Torah. So the first thing I'm asking Hashem is for das. In fact, it's interesting that on Mitzvah Shabbos, we add a bracha, and the bracha is Atachananta, which is a special bracha to make the difference between Shabbos and the weekdays. Now, this bracha is something which we insert into Shemon Esrei. We don't say it every day. We only say it once a week when Shabbos is over. It's like a Havdalah, but in the Shemon Esrei. So the Gemara discusses why was this inserted in the bracha Chayin L'Adam Das? Why not someplace else? Why did the Chachamim choose to insert it specifically by the bracha of Das? And the Gemara's answer is Im Ein Das Havdalah Minayin, which means if you don't have Das, how could you distinguish between one thing and the other? We have to distinguish between Shabbos and weekdays, between holiness and unholiness. The ability to do that is the das. So in a sense, in order for me to distinguish between what's appropriate and what's not, especially if it's on a more subtle level, not so obvious, not so pronounced, not so clear, you need das in order to have that. And that's what I'm asking for. Which means, in addition to the simple meaning, I'm asking Hashem to give me healthy intelligence. I should see things the right way. I should be able to study Torah and understand Torah. We're asking specifically before I start, Hashem, help me recognize those things that are hidden, that they have to be corrected. Once I recognize what needs to be corrected, comes the next bracha. Bali de tshuva, she bracha shniya. That we're asking Ezer Mumayla, assistance from above, Shetia Chuvasi Amitis, that my tshuva should be true. Umakir b'chete, I should recognize whatever it is that I did wrong. Umevake shlicha mechila la'obar. Then comes the next bracha, we're asking for forgiveness. In other words, you can't ask for forgiveness or think about tshuva if you don't recognize that there's something wrong. So the first bracha is Hashem, help me recognize what needs to be corrected. Second bracha is, now that I recognize that Hashem, accept my tshuva, and Hashem, forgive me. So that's the order of the first three brachas. Then comes the next bracha. Bakashas haGeula. We're asking for Geula. Sheyigal as a nefesh kis. Hashem should redeem the godly soul, mimeitzer nefesh bamis, from its hold of the animal soul. In other words, of course, generally speaking, Geula means taking Yidden out of Golus. But on a personal level, my own nefesh kis is in Golus by my nefesh bahamis. So I recognize something's wrong. I recognize that I need to do tshuva, I need to correct it and ask Hashem for forgiveness. But it's also possible that my nefesh bahamis won't let me make that change. It'll hold me, it'll restrict me, and it's sort of chaining me down like Golus. So I'm asking Hashem for help me that I should be able to really release myself from the hold of my nefesh bahamis. And in all these things, we have to do the work ourselves. We're asking Hashem for assistance, right? His divine assistance. After this point, the person asks for bracha for refuah. Again, refuah means to be healthy. If someone's sick, they should be healed. But how does it fit in? And when we're talking about all these things on a more spiritual level, refuah is l'rapes as nafshel kis, to heal the godly soul, mareach ra, from the bad odor, minatachlauyim, from the diseases, shenidbuko ba, that became attached to it, b'yesa b'golos, b'nefesh bahamis. B'gashmi is if a person was chas v'sholom in jail, held hostage, was kidnapped. Imagine someone who, God forbid, was kidnapped by Arabs and hold him there for who knows how long, and then finally he's freed. Technically, physically, he left their camp and he came back home, but there's still a lot to deal with. First of all, even physically, probably was hurt, was beaten, and he has to heal. Emotionally, he has to heal. There's a lot of trauma involved, he has to heal. So the same with the nefesh l'kis and nefesh bahamis. Even after my nefesh l'kis is able to free itself from the constrictions of the nefesh bahamis that's holding on to me, and now I'm already free to do the right thing. But the fact that I was in that little golus, the fact that I was in that place where I had this negative thing, still leaves scars, and I want to heal completely. So therefore, after asking Hashem for Geula, I ask Hashem for refuah. And let's remember, all this does not negate the simple meaning of all these brachas. This is in addition to the simple meaning, there is also a deeper, more personal meaning. After that comes the bracha for Birchas Hashanim, which basically we're asking for mezenis, for sustenance. The field should give good crop, and we should have good food. So there's good food b'gashmius, and there's also good food b'ruchnius, which is Torah b'avodah. To be able to study Torah, to be able to succeed in self-refinement and avodah, all these things we're asking for, means now that my nefesh l'kis is free, and I'm no longer dealing with getting out of that negativity, now I'm asking for bracha to proceed and to grow and to move forward in learning Torah and doing mitzvahs, and just to grow spiritually, going from strength to strength. Now, he doesn't go into the rest. The same as B'shar brachas, the same as with all the brachas. If you look at all the brachas, he gave us a few examples. Hey, Bakashas, they're all asking Hashem, generally for the same thing. Gili Elikus B'nafshi Ba'olam. I'm asking for Hashem's presence to be revealed within me and in the world. And when Hashem's presence is revealed, machriz gamadakos the dakos hara. This helped to get rid of even the ra, the negativity that's there in a very, very subtle way. Now, this negativity that we're talking about, that's dakos hara, that's subtle, there are many levels. It's not just one level. There are many levels in what it could mean. And to give a little bit of an understanding of this, I'll tell you a story that was written down by the Frierdiker Rebbe. Actually, he gave two examples. One story with Tzemach Tzedek, and one story with the Mittel Rebbe, but they're very similar. The story with the Mittel Rebbe, the second Rebbe of Chabad, was that there were times that he would travel to visit the communities where Chassidim lived. In other words, in those days, traveling was not as easy as today. So yes, the Chassidim would travel to Lubavitch to see the Rebbe, but then there were times, and maybe there were other reasons why he traveled, that the Rebbe would travel to certain areas, and all the Chassidim who lived in those areas would go to see the Rebbe, meet the Rebbe. They had an opportunity to hear a Maimer Chassidus. They had the opportunity to go into the Rebbe for a private audience and ask questions and so on. So one of these, when he went on this journey, naturally, his secretaries went along with him, and a lot of the older Chassidim also went along with him because they knew the Rebbe would be speaking and giving over Chassidus, and they all wanted to be part of it. So one time, he made one of these journeys, he was traveling, stopped off in a certain place, and he said that now he's ready to meet the Chassidim one-on-one, which is called Yechidus, a Chassid going to the Rebbe. Now the Yechidus, a private audience with the Rebbe, was mainly that the Rebbe should give me a path in how to serve Hashem personally. So the Chassid would tell the Rebbe what it is that he's doing, what he feels he needs to do, where he feels that he's lacking, what he needs to correct spiritually, and the Rebbe would give him a path, what he can do to grow spiritually and to correct whatever needs to be corrected. In the middle of all this, the Rebbe's secretary notified everyone that everything's stopping. The Yechidus is stopping, there's no why, but the middle Rebbe said just to stop everything. In the middle of when there were lines of people waiting to go in. So that was a surprise. And then, a little while later, the Rebbe's secretary came over to one of the older Chassidim. His face was pale. He said something to the other Chassid. And this older Chassid, his face became pale, and word began to spread. And basically what he found out was that the Rebbe stopped the Yechidus. And what is he doing? He's saying Tillim. And he hears him sobbing. And the Rebbe is fasting, he's not eating. It's going on for hours already. So obviously they understood something must be going on. Maybe there's some decree in heaven. And then the Rebbe became aware of that he stopped everything and is just davening for that decree. So all the Chassidim, when they realized that the Rebbe is in this situation, they all began to say to him. And even though they didn't know what it was about, but they were clear, it was clear to everyone that the Rebbe should stop what he was doing suddenly and have all these people waiting and just go into saying Tillim and then fasting. In fact, the Rebbe, the Mittel Rebbe, was physically not so strong. He had a heart condition, he had a lung condition. And it would happen more than once that the Mittel Rebbe fainted from his weakness. I think you all know one of the famous stories. It's also found in Hayom Yom, that when he heard them reading the Torah about all the curses, it was before Rosh Hashanah, he fainted. And when they asked him later what happened, what caused him to faint, he said when he heard all these horrible things, he fainted. And they said to him, but it's not the first time you hear this every year. So he said, every year my father reads it, the Alter Rebbe reads it. When the Alter Rebbe reads it, he hears the deeper meaning to these things which are actually hidden brachas. Today, an ordinary person read it, and he actually heard it the way it appears outwardly, and he fainted. And they didn't know if he could fast for Yom Kippur, which is a few weeks later, because he was weak. And here, he was so weak from all the Tillim that he had to be in bed. So now the Chassidim were really like panicking, what is going on? What could they do about it? I don't know how long it was, a day or two later, everything went back to regular, and it continued the way it started. Of course, the Chassidim were curious to know when it happened. So one of the Mikdal Rebbe's sons must have asked his father, and this is what he said. He said, when a chassid comes into me, Yechidus, and he asks me, what can I do to correct this and this thing that I did wrong? In order for me to guide him what to do, I have to find something within myself that's similar to what he did, in a more refined way, naturally, in a more subtle way. I have to correct it within myself. After I find it within me, and after I correct it within myself, then I can tell him how to correct it in his world. So naturally, we're talking about a Rebbe, a tzaddik gomer. So it's not about an Aveira. It's not even about something that he did wrong in a subtle way, but it's something spiritually which perhaps could be done better and stronger. And that's in some ways similar, maybe thousand levels of differences, but similar to what the person did. And he said that that day, a chassid came into him, asked him for a tikkun, what could he do to correct something that he did. And when I heard what he did, I was so horrified. And I started to think to myself, do I have anything within me that's even in any subtle, distant way similar to that? And I couldn't find anything. But what does the Rebbe say? The Rebbe said, being that he came into me, obviously that was Hashgacha Pratis. It must be within me. And for whatever reason, I'm not finding what it is. So I stopped everything until I found something within me that's somewhat, in some distant way, similar to what he did. And then I was able to continue this. So basically, there are many levels what we're talking about. When I said the other day, a person was cold to Yiddishkeit, that's actually something negative. When you talk about tzaddikim, it's much deeper than that, and much higher than that, and a much deeper level. But nevertheless, it is and something negative for that person on their level. And every person has to try to find what are those little things, because from the little things, they grow to become big things. Now here it gives a very interesting explanation to a question that's a very obvious question about davening. This is the reason. I wonder if anyone ever thought of this. After Shmon Esrei in the morning, we say Yashamnu, Bagadnu, Gazalnu, Dibarnu, Deifi. L'chayra, in essence, Inyan Aviduyim, the place to say this confession, I'm going in to speak to Hashem. That's Shmon Esrei, like going into the king's palace. I'm going to be standing face to face with the king. So when is the time to do tshuva? Before I go into the king or after I walk out? It makes sense that before I go in, I purify myself. It's like Yom Kippur, before Yom Kippur is coming, we do tshuva. Not after it's over that I'm going to do tshuva. How does that fit in? So the answer is, first the person davens the first part of davening, Psukkah de Zimra. We meditate on the greatness of Hashem. Then he does Birchas Krishma. He talks about the love for Hashem and how the angels serve Hashem with love. Then Krishma. And then he does all the praying of Shemona Esrei. Where's the room for confession? Then the confession belongs before, not after I'm so invested in davening and connecting to Hashem. What is the connection? Before the davening, derech ish yosher be'eino. A person sees himself that everything is fine. Kishloi asa aveira. It's as if I never did anything wrong. He doesn't see what I've done wrong. Adrabah, asa is a mitzvah. He looks at himself. I did this mitzvah. I learned Torah. Nidmalei. It appears to him shu karev l'elokus, that he's close to godliness. Ve'enoi margish klal b'hara shabai. Doesn't feel that there's anything negative there. Omnam haidei hatzirav, the tefillah. Tzirav means refinement. When a person davens, they become more refined. Like there's a pasuk where it says, "Kimitzaref lekesef, ish lefi mahalalei." that the davening where you're praising Hashem is like refining silver. What? What does it mean? Yeah. Where does silver come from? Silver, gold, where does it come from? It comes from the ground. So you find silver in the ground, but when you take the silver out of the ground, it's connected to earth. They're very closely connected. And there's special procedure, special process to separate the silver from the dirt, from the earth. It's called a refinery. There's this, you refine silver, you refine gold, and other precious things that are in the ground. So davening is a form of refining, separating the good from the bad. And that happens when I'm davening. Why? Because I'm becoming so super sensitive of Hashem, so I become more sensitive of things in me that need to be corrected. Hilul means praising. Ishlifi mahalla means when a person davens and he's praising Hashem. Shemavakesh kirves elikim, and in davening he's searching for that closeness to Hashem, because that's really the essence of davening. In fact, next week we're going to have a parasha called Vayetze. In that parasha we have this famous story of Yaakov had a dream. In the dream he saw a ladder. What is the significance of this ladder? It was a prophecy. So there are many, many Purushim, many ways of interpreting the ladder. But one of them is what it says in the Zohar, Sulam dot Sulusa. The ladder is davening. Davening is compared to a ladder. Just like a ladder, and that ladder was standing on the ground, and through the ladder they climbed up to Shemayim. So too, davening is a person stands on the ground, and through the davening we go up to Shemayim. In other words, the whole idea of davening is becoming closer and closer to Hashem, every person on their level. So the more I make an effort to become closer to Hashem, margish es hasigim v'apselah shabai, then he feels more the things in him which are not pure. And these are the things, they block him from really feeling godliness. So in other words, when do I feel it? Only when I make an effort to go closer to Hashem. I remember we was learning this mimer, and someone brought up in class about someone that they knew that had some problem with their heart. So they give him a stress test. What is a stress test? That they tell them they go on a machine and you have to walk very fast. And then they see how the heart is functioning, which means in normal circumstances, you won't see it. But when you're making more of an effort, then you'll start noticing if there's something that's imperfect, something that needs attention, something that needs to be taken care of. So in normal circumstances, the person doesn't feel that there's something not in order. But as he makes an effort to get closer to Hashem, and then he'll start feeling that there are things in him that are blocking. And they only block when I try to reach the higher level. When I'm reading the ordinary level, I don't feel that it's blocking. Sometimes they give a mashal that if you have a garment and there's a stain on the garment, a small little stain, normally you won't even notice it. When you take this garment and you whitewash it, you make it very clean. Now it's white and pure. Suddenly the little stains that you didn't see before, they show up. But before you didn't notice it. So as a person makes an effort to become purer and closer to Hashem, the little things that were there start interfering. They don't let me go so much closer. I become aware of it. When I become aware of it, I can correct it. So Psukkah de Zimra, the Krishma, when a person is saying Psukkah de Zimra, when a person says the Shema, Margish Rag Begasisara, that makes me aware of the coarse things that are negative, those that are black and white, that are not so hard to recognize. But it won't make me aware of these subtle things. When you're in a lower level, then these little things don't even get in the way. Only when you want to reach a higher level, then these little things, they get in the way and they block you, and then you become aware of it. So there's a similar story with the Frierdiker Rebbe that it was Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur was over, and the Frierdiker Rebbe turned to his father, the Rebbe Rashab, and says, "And now what?" What does it mean? It was just a month of Elul. The whole month, you're davening, you're doing tshuva, you hear the shofar, you say slichas. And by your Rebbe, every day and every minute of the day was very precious, and you're going further and further. And then you have Rosh Hashanah, and then you have the 10 days of tshuva. And then you reach the top of the mountain, which is Yom Kippur. And after that, he said to the Rebbe, and now what? So the Rebbe asked him, now you first start doing tshuva. How can that be? I've been doing that for the whole time. This is the answer. He didn't mean the kind of tshuva we do before Yom Kippur. Now that I've risen to such a high level, there are things that come up, things that become exposed that I never even knew that it's there. Now I start feeling it, and now we start doing the tshuva and the more refined, subtle things. I mean, to give a mashal on a very sort of a very simple level, is like a person who is not keeping Torah mitzvahs. And we want to get more involved. So they light Shabbos candles, they go to shul, they have a Shabbos meal, they have chicken soup Friday night. They're slowly trying to do things to be more Jewish. At that point, it's irrelevant that they're not medayik in a little nuance that it says in Shulchan Aruch about a certain malacha. That's not the issue right now. That it's irrelevant almost. Right now, it's about the general observance of Shabbos. Once a person reaches a level that they're keeping Shabbos and they're doing everything and they're keeping all the malachas and they're keeping all the positive things of Shabbos and it's become part of their life, then they can start learning halacha and going into the more intricate details and realize this could be done better, this could be done this way, this could be done that way. But otherwise, at that point, these things are not relevant. They're only relevant after I reach that higher level. Before that, it's irrelevant. You know, when the Rebbe came out with Miftzah Tefillin, one of the oppositions, Baruch Hashem, everything the Rebbe came out with, there was always opposition. Miftzah Tefillin was one of the first big things in 1967. And what was the opposition? The opposition was, how can you just put on tefillin? You have to wash your hands first. You have to go through certain things to prepare yourself. And there's a whole procedure how a person puts on tefillin. You just stop someone on the street and wrap tefillin around. Of course, the Rebbe brought all the sources in halacha that these things don't really get in the way. But at that point, when the person is someone who doesn't put on tefillin, which Rahman al-Islamis, that's a big aveira. Man doesn't put on tefillin. Not for these people, because unfortunately they never knew about it. But imagine a person did not put on tefillin, and now I'm getting him to put on tefillin. Once tefillin becomes part of his routine, part of his life, then you can talk to him about the little details, the nuances, how to put it on, where and when, and to sit, or should I stand, or this goes first, this goes after. But at the beginning, when he's first starting, it's about just generally black and white. Put on tefillin. Later, you can talk, you know what? When you put on tefillin, you're supposed to have certain kavanas. You can't talk to the person about kavanas. He's running to work. I'm stopping him. It's not just because he's running to work. The whole idea of tefillin is like right now, something new to him. So first, he put on tefillin. And all the other details are right now, they're almost like irrelevant. Doesn't make any difference. Later, when he reached a level where it's higher, and he's more involved in tefillin, he can start talking about many details, how to put on tefillin in a much better way, in a more perfect way, in a more spiritual way. What to have in mind when I put on the head, what to have in mind when I put on the hand, and what should I think about, and what does it mean, and so on and so forth. So this is the general idea, that dafka after Yom Kippur, or in this case, dafka after Shemona Esrei, when I came to the top of the mountain, that's when I'm going to feel how's my breathing doing? I don't feel the problem when I'm on a lower place. But when I'm in a higher place and something is not in order with my breathing, I'll feel it because it's such a high mountain. And over here, you have to be much stronger to be perfectly healthy. So the same is spiritually. Dafke kishmagil Shemona Esrei. When a person reaches Shemona Esrei, he wants to be close to Hashem. When he realizes how Hashem is infinitely greater and further from where he is, then he becomes aware of the dakas shabai, even the smaller things, the subtle things, and he feels bad about it. And through that, that's the bow and arrow. Is able to get rid of these smaller negative things. And that's why we say that's getting rid of this subtle. So I guess getting rid of the other things, that's before Shmaresa, that's when I'm davening. But after Shmaresa, that's when I become aware of something new, and then I say Hashamnu to get rid of those new things that I just discovered as a result of the fact that I was able to rise to a higher level. So we won't leave this to the end because then it's harder to remember. So let's go now to page 19. Just go over the terms. These are the terms that are used often in Chassidus, so I think it's important to know them and recognize them. Number one is mi'umka deliba. What does that mean? It's Aramaic, but it's pretty similar to Hebrew. Yes, umka means the depth, and liba means the heart. And chitzonim, what does chitzonim mean? What?
External.
External. What does it mean, external? Right. It's another name referring to klippos. They're called the externals because they're external in reference to godliness. They're on the outside. And more reasons why they're called chitzonim. They also receive their nourishment and their sustenance from Hashem, but from an external place in Hashem. So, but generally speaking, just to know that there's another name for klipa. They're either called klipas or chitzonim. Number 3 and 4 are the two things we've been talking about. Dakas hara means something which is more subtle, and gasas hara means something which is more pronounced. To give you another example of dakas hara, how it could even be by tzaddikim, but not chas v'shalom that they did something wrong, is the famous story with Reb Sadia Goin. It could be I mentioned it Tishrei time, that the Talmid and the students of Reb Sadia Goin saw him davening like everybody else, but naturally when he said the Ashamnu, it was like shocking. What do you mean he's saying Ashamnu, Bagadnu, Gazalnu, Dibarnu, Deifi? If you read the words and the meaning of the words, how could he say these words? He stole, he sinned intentionally. All these things don't really fit in. So they approached him and asked him the question. So he said there was an innkeeper that once taught me how to do tshuva. An innkeeper would teach Reb Sadia Goin how to do tshuva. How's that? And he told him the story that he was traveling and he stayed at an inn in a faraway place. And being that in those days we didn't have cameras, so even though people knew the name of Sadia Goin, not only they knew the name, they knew that he was the greatest authority of Torah in the whole generation. And the whole world wrote to him and asked them questions in Torah. Reb Sadia Goin, nobody knew what he looked like initially. Apparently, after being there for a few days, someone did recognize who he is, and everybody came running to the hotel to greet him. So one day, the innkeeper walks out of the hotel, goes outside, and he sees a few hundred people standing outside. And he says, "What's everybody doing here? What happened?" He said, "You don't know? Reb Sadia Goin is in your hotel. We all came to greet him." Sadia Goin is my hotel. I had no idea. And the Reb Sadia Goin came out to greet the people. When he came out, he fell to his feet. He began sobbing, asking for forgiveness. And he couldn't calm down. And finally, when he calms down, the Reb Sadia Goin says to him, "What are you so upset about? You gave me breakfast and lunch and supper. You brought me everything that I needed, towels, pillows, sheets, whatever I needed, you gave me. You provided me with all the things that I need. What are you crying about? So he said, Rebbe, if I would have known that this is you, I would have done it totally on a different level. So Saadia Gaon said that every day I learn more about Hashem, and I know Hashem way, way better than I knew him yesterday. And I say to myself, wow, if I would have known yesterday what I know today, I would have served you totally on a different level. And the next day he knows even more about Hashem, and the same thing repeats itself. So we're not talking about Chas v'Shalom and Aveira. To him, this is also Dakos Hara, meaning to say, relatively speaking, compared to what I know and what I understand, then the enthusiasm, the love, the feeling, the passion should have been more than what it was. That's the subtle. And to recognize that only comes as you climb higher, as you want to get closer, then you feel, oh, there's something blocking. And then you realize something has to be corrected. Okay, we'll stop here. Okay, number 5, let's do this quickly. Midechi al dechi means what? Level to level, but this is going downstairs. Yeah, from one descent to another descent. I'm not sure even what the word dechi means. It looks like it's from the word dechia, maybe pushing down something. It's pushed down. Kal shebekalim, what does that mean? In Tanya, you find the word kal means light. In this context, it means a person who's light-hearted to Torah mitzvahs, takes it lightly. I didn't do it, no big deal. Kal shebekal, that means light of light, meaning to say that not only they're light to Torah, and they're like super light when it comes to Torah mitzvahs. There's a story with a chassid that he once went, he was very close to the Rebbe Rashab, and he would often come to the house. He knew the Rebbetzin. And one time he was about to sit down on a chair. He said, no, that's a very schwache chair. It's a chair that's shaking. You might fall. He says, it's okay. I'm a kal shebekalim. I'm very light, so it doesn't matter. And what's the last one on the page? Karirus. What does that mean? It's what you feel in this room right now. Coldness. But in this context, it means coldness to Hashem, to Torah mitzvahs. I'm doing the Torah mitzvahs, no fire, no enthusiasm, no passion. It's done in a cold way. And that's an example of Dakos Hara that leads later to Chas v'Shalom, taking Torah mitzvahs lightly, doing things that are really b'di'evet and doing it lechatchila, and then eventually it could even lead to violating Torah. Okay, we will stop here. Okay,